Scarlett nearly dropped her phone when she heard Luca's voice crack on the other end of the line. She pressed it closer to her ear, certain she'd misheard his words. "Wait, what? Luca, that's wonderful news. Why do you sound like someone died?" she asked, her brow furrowing as she glanced toward the hotel room window where Brighton's skyline stretched before her. There was a long pause filled only with Luca's uneven breathing, the kind that came before a difficult confession. "Because the doctors say it shouldn't be possible," he finally said, his voice barely above a whisper, each word weighted with disbelief and fear. Scarlett felt her chest tighten. "What do you mean it shouldn't be possible?" she asked, motioning urgently to Caleb that she needed privacy. He nodded immediately, understanding the gravity in her expression, and ushered Liam and the twins out of the hotel room with a gentle hand on their shoulders. Luca exhaled slowly, the sound crackling through the phone speaker. "Remember when I told you I couldn't have children? That accident years ago. The doctors were crystal clear about it. They said my chances were less than 1%, Scarlett. Less than 1%. Rachel and I weren't even trying. We'd already talked about adopting another child after Dash, maybe two more. We had plans." Scarlett's mind raced through the implications, her lawyer's brain already assembling pieces of a puzzle she didn't want to see forming. "But miracles happen, Luca. You said less than 1%, not zero. Medical science isn't infallible." "That's exactly what Rachel keeps saying," Luca admitted, and Scarlett could hear the torment in his voice. "But Scarlett, there's more, much more." Another pause, longer this time, filled with the weight of unspoken doubts. Rachel's ex-boyfriend, Henderson, the one who refused to support Dash, the one who called him a mistake, he's been calling her. Constantly. Ever since we got married 6 months ago, he's been trying to contact her. She always blocked him, changed her number twice, but 3 weeks ago he showed up at her workplace. A chill ran down Scarlett's spine, her free hand instinctively gripping the edge of the desk. "What did he want?" "He said he made a mistake," Luca's voice cracked again, "that he wants Rachel back, that he's realized Dash is his son and he wants to be a father now, after years of denying him, that he's changed, grown up, wants to make things right." He paused and Scarlett heard him take a shaky breath. "And now Rachel's pregnant, and I can't help but wonder if the timing is—" "Stop right there," Scarlett interrupted sharply, her tone firm but compassionate. "Luca James, I'm going to say this once, and I need you to listen. Rachel loves you. She chose you when she had every reason to walk away from love entirely. She married you. That woman went through absolute hell with Henderson, public humiliation, financial struggle, raising Dash alone while Henderson pretended he didn't exist. And she fought alongside you to make sure Dash had the father he deserved. Do you really think she would betray you after everything you've built together?" "No," Luca said quickly, almost reflexively. "No, I don't think that. But Scarlett, the timing, the medical impossibility, Henderson showing up again, it's eating me alive. I can't sleep. I can barely look at Rachel without these doubts crawling through my mind like poison." Scarlett's heart ached for her friend. "Then get a paternity test," she said firmly, her legal training kicking in. "Not because you don't trust Rachel, make that clear to her, but because you need peace of mind. Both of you do. And Luca, you need to tell Rachel about these doubts before they destroy your marriage from the inside out. Communication is what keeps marriages alive through storms like this." "You're right," Luca said after a moment that seemed to stretch forever. "I'll talk to her tonight. I have to. Thank you, Scarlett. I don't know what I'd do without you." After hanging up, Scarlett stared at her phone, her mind churning through possibilities and implications she didn't want to entertain. She hated seeing Luca in pain, especially after everything he'd overcome in his relationship with his father in his past. But something about Henderson's sudden reappearance bothered her deeply, scratching at her instincts like a warning she couldn't quite decipher. Why would Henderson suddenly show up after years of refusing to acknowledge Dash's existence, after denying paternity, after forcing Rachel to sue him just to get basic child support? What did he really want? And more importantly, who was pulling the strings behind this sudden change of heart? Caleb found Scarlett still standing by the window 20 minutes later, lost in thought, her reflection ghostly in the darkening glass. "Everything okay, kitten?" he asked, wrapping his arms around her waist from behind and pulling her against his chest. "I'm not sure," she admitted, leaning into his warmth and solid presence. "Luca's going through something complicated. Rachel's pregnant, but he's worried because of his medical history. The doctors told him years ago he couldn't have children." Caleb pressed a kiss to her temple, his breath warm against her skin. "Luca's been through worse battles than this. He'll figure it out. They both will." "I hope so," Scarlett murmured, but deep down she couldn't shake the feeling that something darker was at play. Something orchestrated and deliberate that went beyond coincidence. 3 days later, Scarlett returned to work at the Brighton law firm, feeling rejuvenated from her brief vacation, but was immediately pulled into an emergency meeting with Jessica and Yael. The moment she walked into the conference room and saw their grim expressions, she knew something significant was coming her way. "Welcome back," Jessica said with a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I hope you enjoyed your time off because we need you on a new case immediately. Like, starting this afternoon immediately." Yael slid a thick file across the polished conference table, the kind of file that meant months of work and sleepless nights. Mayor Richard Ashford, insurance fraud, money laundering, embezzlement of city funds, and now, potentially, blackmail and witness intimidation. Scarlett opened the file carefully, her eyes widening as she scanned the first few pages of documents. Financial records, wire transfers, coded messages, surveillance photos. This is enormous. Who's bringing the charges? A coalition of insurance companies who've paid out millions in suspicious claims, the state attorney general's office who's been building a case for 2 years, and Jessica paused for dramatic effect, her eyes gleaming, an anonymous whistleblower who claims to have evidence that could bring down half of Brighton's political elite, including city council members, the police commissioner, and several prominent business owners. Scarlett's pulse quickened as she flipped through more pages, each one more damning than the last. Who's the whistleblower? What's their credibility? How did they get this information? "We don't know their identity yet," Yael admitted, leaning back in his chair. "They're working through multiple layers of intermediaries and encrypted communications. But they provided documents, audio recordings, video surveillance, and financial records that our forensic accountants have verified as authentic. This case could define your career, Scarlett. It could also paint a target on your back." She looked at the file again, her mind already racing through legal strategies, potential witnesses, defense arguments she'd need to counter. This wasn't just a case. This was warfare conducted in courtrooms with careers and reputations as casualties. "When do we start building our case?" "Yesterday," Jessica said with a grim smile. "The mayor's legal team is already mobilizing a defense that includes some of the most expensive lawyers in the state. We have 2 weeks to prepare for the preliminary hearing where we'll need to convince the judge there's enough evidence to proceed to trial." 1 week later, Scarlett was drowning in paperwork, depositions, and late nights at the office when her phone buzzed with an urgent message. It was Rachel, and even through text, Scarlett could sense the panic. "Scarlett, I need to see you. Please. It's urgent. Can you meet me?" They met at a quiet cafe near Rachel's office, a small place with worn booths and privacy. The moment Scarlett saw Rachel's face, pale, eyes red-rimmed and swollen from crying, hands trembling, she knew something terrible had happened. "He knows," Rachel whispered, clutching her coffee cup so tightly her knuckles turned white. "Luca knows about Henderson showing up at my work multiple times. I should have told him sooner, been completely transparent, but I didn't want to worry him when he was dealing with so much already. Now he thinks—" Her voice broke completely, tears streaming down her face. "He thinks the baby might not be his." Scarlett reached across the small table, gripping Rachel's hand firmly. "Did you tell him the complete truth? That nothing happened with Henderson? That every encounter was him harassing you?" "I did," Rachel said, her voice thick with anguish. "I told him everything. Every phone call I blocked, every message I deleted, every time Henderson tried to approach me. But I can see it in Luca's eyes, Scarlett. He wants to believe me, desperately wants to, but he can't. Or maybe the doubt is just too strong. The medical impossibility keeps haunting him." "Then prove it," Scarlett said gently but firmly. "Get the paternity test. Clear the air completely. Eliminate any shadow of doubt. Rachel's face crumpled further. I suggested exactly that. Do you know what he said? He said no. He said if he asks for a test, it means he doesn't trust me, and if he doesn't trust me, then our marriage is already over and we're just pretending. Scarlett cursed under her breath, recognizing Luca's self-destructive pattern. That's Luca being stubborn, prideful, and sabotaging himself. Listen to me carefully, Rachel. You need to make him see reason before this doubt poisons everything you've built together. This isn't about trust. It's about removing a weapon that's being used against your marriage. Rachel nodded, wiping her tears with a napkin. But then her expression shifted to something even more distressed. There's something else. Something worse. She pulled out a legal document from her purse with shaking hands. Henderson's lawyer contacted me yesterday. They're filing a motion to reopen the child support case. They claim new evidence shows I coerced Henderson into relinquishing his parental rights through emotional manipulation and false statements. Scarlett's jaw literally dropped. That's completely absurd. What evidence could they possibly have? I don't know the details yet, Rachel said miserably. But if they succeed in reopening the case, it could affect Luca's legal adoption of Dash. The adoption was just finalized 4 months ago. And with me pregnant, with Henderson claiming he wants to be involved, she couldn't finish the sentence. The implications too horrible to speak aloud. Scarlett's legal mind was already working at full speed, analyzing angles and strategies. Send me everything you have, every document, every communication, every court record from the original case. I'll look into this immediately. Someone's playing a very calculated game here, Rachel, and I'm going to find out exactly who and why. Meanwhile, at the Wright mansion across town, Caleb was in the nursery with Louis and Levon, changing diapers and singing off-key lullabies when his phone rang. The caller ID showed his brother Kyle, and something about the timing made Caleb's stomach clench with worry. Kyle, what's happening? We have a serious problem, Kyle said without preamble, his voice tight with controlled anger. Someone with significant resources and connections has been conducting a deep investigation into the family's finances. They've formally requested audits on all the Diamond Hotel holdings, specifically focusing on the property acquisitions from 5 years ago. Caleb's blood ran cold as ice water in his veins. 5 years ago was when they'd purchased the Belmont property, a deal that had been legally complex, ethically contentious, and involved multiple parties with competing interests. Who's making these requests? What's their stated purpose? We don't know their identity yet, Kyle admitted, frustration clear in his voice. But whoever they are, they have serious resources, political connections, and inside knowledge of our business operations. This isn't random curiosity, Caleb. This is targeted. Someone is deliberately coming after the family. Do Mom and Dad know about this yet? I'm meeting with them and the legal team tonight, Kyle said. But Caleb, there's something else you need to know. Something that connects directly to Scarlett. He paused and Caleb could hear papers shuffling. The lawyer who filed the audit request and is representing the interested party? It's Jonathan James. Caleb's grip tightened on the phone until his knuckles went white. Jonathan James, Luca's estranged father, the man who'd made Luca's entire life a living hell, and who'd built a career taking cases specifically designed to hurt people Luca cared about, to destroy his son's happiness and success out of pure spite. Why would Jonathan specifically target our family? Caleb asked, though his investigative mind was already assembling the pieces of this ugly puzzle. I think it's revenge, Kyle said quietly, his voice grim. Luca humiliated Jonathan professionally when he won the Perez case last year, beat him in court, exposed his client's insurance fraud, made Jonathan look incompetent in front of the entire legal community. And now Luca's married to Rachel, the exact woman Jonathan's client Henderson wanted back and was trying to reclaim. This is deeply personal, Caleb. Jonathan doesn't just want to win a case. He wants to destroy everything Luca values, and that includes the people who support him. Caleb closed his eyes, his mind racing through implications and potential damage. I need to call Scarlett immediately. She needs to know what we're facing. 2 weeks later, Scarlett stood before Judge Harrison Mitchell in the preliminary hearing for the Mayor Ashford case. The courtroom was absolutely packed. Journalists with cameras and notepads, political figures watching nervously, and curious onlookers eager to witness what many were calling the trial of the decade. Across the center aisle sat Mayor Ashford's formidable defense team, and at its head, looking impeccably dressed and supremely confident, sat Jonathan James himself. Scarlett's stomach churned violently when she first saw him, but she refused to show any weakness or intimidation. Jonathan was known throughout the legal community as ruthless, calculating, brilliant, and willing to bend or break ethical rules to secure victories for his clients. "Ms. Wright," Judge Mitchell said in his deep, authoritative voice, "you may present your opening statement for why this case should proceed to full trial." Scarlett rose smoothly, adjusted her suit jacket, and approached the bench with carefully measured confidence. "Your Honor, this case is fundamentally about accountability and the abuse of public trust. Mayor Ashford systematically abused his elected position over a period of 6 years to orchestrate fraudulent insurance claims totaling over $50 million, siphon public funds intended for city infrastructure into private accounts, and blackmail individuals who threatened to expose his criminal enterprise. The evidence we will present is overwhelming, thoroughly documented, and absolutely irrefutable. We respectfully ask that this court allow the case to proceed to full trial, where justice can be properly served." Jonathan James rose with theatrical slowness, his smile cold and predatory. "Your Honor, what we have here is nothing more than a politically motivated witch hunt orchestrated by the mayor's opponents who fear his continued success and reform agenda. The so-called evidence amounts to circumstantial connections at best and deliberate fabrications at worst. We move for immediate dismissal of all charges based on insufficient evidence and prosecutorial overreach." For the next 3 intense hours, both legal teams argued with increasing intensity. Scarlett methodically presented financial records showing suspicious transfers, testimony from 3 whistleblowers who'd worked in the mayor's office, and audio recordings of conversations that strongly suggested criminal conspiracy. Jonathan countered every point with technical legal objections, procedural challenges, and systematic attacks on witness credibility that were masterfully executed. Finally, as afternoon light slanted through the courtroom windows, Judge Mitchell called for a recess. "I'll review all submitted materials and issue my ruling tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock." As Scarlett gathered her extensive files and prepared to leave, Jonathan approached with deliberate casualness. "Miss Wright, might I have a brief word?" She turned slowly, keeping her expression professionally neutral. "Mr. James." "You're quite impressive in court," Jonathan said smoothly, his tone almost complimentary. "I can see why Luca speaks so highly of your abilities. It's genuinely a shame you're on the wrong side of this particular case." "The only wrong side is defending a demonstrably corrupt mayor," Scarlett replied coolly, not taking the bait. Jonathan's smile widened slightly, not reaching his cold eyes. "Tell me, how is my son doing these days? I heard through various channels that his wife is expecting their first biological child together. Congratulations are certainly in order, I suppose, though the timing is rather curious." Scarlett's eyes narrowed dangerously. "What exactly do you want, Jonathan? Get to your actual point." "Just making polite conversation between professional colleagues," Jonathan said with false innocence. "Though I must say, it's rather curious how Rachel became pregnant so soon after my client, Henderson, made genuine efforts to reconnect with her and his son. Life is absolutely full of surprising coincidences and unexpected developments, isn't it?" Scarlett's blood boiled with fury, but years of courtroom experience helped her maintain perfect composure. "If you have something substantive to say it directly instead of hiding behind insinuations." Jonathan leaned slightly closer, lowering his voice to barely above a whisper. "I'm simply suggesting that sometimes the people we trust most completely, the ones we defend most passionately, are actually the ones hiding the biggest and most devastating secrets. Enjoy your evening, Ms. Wright. I'm sure we'll see quite a lot of each other in the coming months." He walked away casually, leaving Scarlett shaken, furious, and deeply concerned about what Jonathan might be planning. That night at the Wright mansion, Scarlett told Caleb everything about her disturbing encounter with Jonathan, pacing their bedroom like a caged animal. "He's playing calculated mind games," she said, her voice tight with anger and worry. "He wants me rattled, distracted, emotionally compromised, so I'll make mistakes in court. And it's working." Caleb observed gently from where he sat on their bed. Scarlett shot him a sharp look. Not helping, Tiger. Caleb reached out and pulled her firmly onto his lap, wrapping his arms around her. Jonathan's dangerous specifically because he knows exactly how to identify and exploit weaknesses in people. But Kitten, you're much stronger and more resilient than he thinks. Don't let him get inside your head and set up permanent residence there. I'm terrified about what he might be planning for Luca and Rachel, Scarlett admitted, her voice dropping. What if Jonathan has actual evidence of something? What if he's planning to use their personal lives, their vulnerabilities, to distract from the Ashford case or destroy Luca's reputation? Then we protect them, Caleb said with absolute certainty. We figure out exactly what Jonathan's planning, and we stop him before he can execute it. You're not alone in this fight, Scarlett. 2 days later, Judge Mitchell ruled that the Mayor Ashford case had sufficient merit and evidence to proceed to full trial. It was a significant victory, but Scarlett knew the real brutal battle was just beginning and would consume months of her life. That same afternoon, she received an urgent call from Luca, his voice strained almost to breaking. Scarlett, can you come to our house as soon as possible? Rachel and I desperately need to talk to you about something. When Scarlett arrived at Luca and Rachel's modest but charming home, the tension was immediately palpable, thick enough to cut. Luca looked absolutely exhausted, his usually sharp professional appearance disheveled, with dark circles under bloodshot eyes. Rachel sat rigidly on the couch, her hands folded protectively over her growing stomach, her face pale and drawn. What's happened? Scarlett asked, sitting down carefully. Luca silently handed her a manila envelope, his hands trembling slightly. This arrived by courier this morning. It's from Henderson's lawyer, my father. Scarlett opened it with growing dread, her eyes rapidly scanning the legal document inside. It was a formal motion demanding a court-ordered paternity test for Rachel's unborn child, citing substantial reasonable doubt about paternity and concerns about fraud. This is absolutely insane, Scarlett said, anger rising hot in her chest. Jonathan has absolutely no legal standing to demand this. He's not a party to your marriage? There's more, Rachel said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. She handed Scarlett another document, a sworn affidavit from a private investigator claiming to possess photographic and video evidence of Rachel and Henderson meeting privately on multiple occasions over the past 4 months. Scarlett's heart sank as she read the detailed descriptions. Rachel, is any of this true? Did you meet with Henderson? He ambushed me outside my office 3 times, Rachel said, her voice shaking with emotion. The first time was 4 months ago. I told him firmly to leave me alone and never contact me again. The encounter lasted maybe 5 minutes total. I didn't tell Luca because I genuinely didn't want to worry him when he was dealing with so much stress from work. The second time was 6 weeks ago. He cornered me in a parking garage. That time I threatened to call security if he didn't leave immediately. The third time was 3 weeks ago at a coffee shop. Each time I told him to stay away. Luca stared at the floor, his jaw clenched so tightly Scarlett could see the muscles jumping. The silence stretched painfully. This is obviously a calculated setup, Scarlett said firmly, her legal mind analyzing the situation. Jonathan's deliberately trying to destroy your marriage, specifically to distract from the Ashford case and damage both Luca's professional reputation and my ability to focus. He knows that if Luca's personal life is in complete turmoil, it'll affect his work, his judgment, and my concentration by extension, since we're close friends. What should we do? Rachel asked, tears beginning to stream down her face. Scarlett thought rapidly, formulating a strategy. We fight back aggressively and strategically. First, we hire our own private investigator to pull all available surveillance footage from those locations on those specific dates. We document and catalog every single interaction Henderson has attempted to have with you, Rachel. We build a harassment case if necessary. And Rachel, she paused, making direct eye contact. I need you to voluntarily take the paternity test immediately. But Luca said, Rachel began, looking toward her husband. I was completely wrong, Luca interrupted, finally looking at Rachel for the first time since Scarlett arrived. I let fear, pride, and insecurity get in the way of rational thinking. If taking this test voluntarily will end this nightmare and remove any shadow of doubt, then we do it immediately. together. Rachel's eyes filled with fresh tears. You believe me? You truly believe nothing happened? Luca took her hand carefully. I want to believe you. I need to believe you. Help me get there completely. Help me silence these doubts that Jonathan deliberately planted. 3 weeks of investigation and legal maneuvering later, the paternity results came back from an independent laboratory. The baby was definitively, unquestionably, Luca's child. Scarlett watched the profound relief flood Luca's face as he held Rachel, both of them crying tears of joy, gratitude, and emotional exhaustion. But the victory was devastatingly short-lived. 2 days after the results were disclosed, Jonathan filed yet another motion, this time claiming that Luca had illegally coerced Rachel into taking the test under duress, violating her reproductive rights and bodily autonomy. It was legally absurd, completely baseless, but that didn't matter to Jonathan. The goal wasn't to win these motions. The goal was to create sustained chaos, emotional damage, and professional distraction. On the opening day of the Mayor Ashford trial 6 weeks later, the courthouse was mobbed. Security had been doubled due to threats. The courtroom itself was absolutely packed with journalists, political observers, and curious citizens. Scarlett stood at the prosecution's table with her team arranged behind her, going over last-minute notes. Across the aisle, Jonathan James sat with Mayor Ashford, looking supremely confident and relaxed. As the trial officially began, Scarlett presented her case with meticulous precision. She called witnesses who testified about suspicious transactions. She introduced financial records that painted a devastating picture of systematic corruption. She played audio recordings that clearly suggested criminal conspiracy and intent. But Jonathan was absolutely relentless in his defense. He attacked every single witness's credibility with surgical precision. He questioned every piece of evidence with technical legal objections. He suggested alternative explanations for every suspicious transaction. On the third day of trial, Jonathan called a surprise witness that made Scarlett's stomach drop, Henderson himself. Scarlett watched with barely contained fury as Henderson took the witness stand, looking polished, rehearsed, and smugly confident. Mr. Henderson, Jonathan began smoothly, can you describe your relationship with Rachel Green? We were together for 2 years, Henderson said, his voice carrying false emotion. I genuinely loved her. I wanted to marry her and build a life together. And why did that relationship end? She became pregnant unexpectedly and completely refused to consider any other options. I honestly wasn't ready to be a father at that time in my life, and I communicated that clearly. She said she understood my position, but then months later she sued me aggressively for child support. Jonathan nodded with theatrical sympathy. And recently, have you attempted to reconnect with Ms. Green? Yes, Henderson said, his performance Oscar-worthy. I realized over time that I'd made a terrible mistake. I wanted to be part of my son Dash's life. I wanted to support them financially and emotionally. But when I reached out respectfully, she was cold, distant, hostile even. Then shortly after, I discovered she was pregnant again. And what did you think when you heard that news? Henderson paused dramatically for maximum effect. I wondered if the child might actually be mine. We had a moment together, just one night several months ago, when we unexpectedly ran into each other. I believe she was experiencing regret about marrying Lucas so quickly and wanted to reconnect with what we once had. Scarlett shot to her feet. Objection. This testimony is completely irrelevant to the case at hand and is clearly an orchestrated ploy to discredit opposing counsel and distract from the actual evidence. Judge Mitchell frowned deeply. Mr. James, what is the specific relevance of this testimony to insurance fraud charges against Mayor Ashford? Jonathan smiled smoothly. Your Honor, we are establishing a clear pattern of questionable behavior, deception, and potential fraud by individuals directly connected to the prosecution team. If Ms. Wright's close professional associate, Mr. Luca James, is involved in a personal scandal involving fraud, deception, and questions of paternity, it raises serious questions about the integrity and motivations behind this entire prosecution. Scarlett's hands balled into tight fists. This is nothing but character assassination, Your Honor. Mr. Henderson's claims have already been thoroughly disproven. There was a paternity test that definitively established A test that Mr. Luca James pressured and coerced his vulnerable pregnant wife into taking, Jonathan interrupted smoothly. Judge Mitchell held up both hands firmly. Enough from both of you. Mr. James, I'm allowing this testimony under extremely limited scope, but you're walking a very fine line. Proceed carefully. As Henderson continued weaving his elaborate lies, Scarlett's mind raced through strategies to discredit him. During her cross-examination, she stood and fixed Henderson with her hardest courtroom stare. Mr. Henderson, you claim you and Rachel had a romantic encounter 4 months ago. Where exactly did this alleged encounter take place? Henderson hesitated slightly. At her office building. Her office building, Scarlett repeated slowly. A public building with extensive security cameras throughout. Did you know that we've obtained complete footage from that day, and every day you claim to have met with Rachel? Henderson's face visibly paled. Scarlett played the video on the courtroom's large monitors. It showed Henderson approaching Rachel outside her office. Rachel's body language was clearly defensive, uncomfortable. She obviously told him to leave. The entire interaction lasted exactly 4 minutes and 20 seconds, and they never physically touched even once. Does this look like a romantic encounter to you, Mr. Henderson? Scarlett asked coldly. Henderson stammered. She was playing hard to get. You lied under oath, Scarlett stated flatly. You fabricated an elaborate story to hurt Rachel and Luca because you're angry that she moved on and built a happy life without you. That's the actual truth, isn't it? Objection, Jonathan shouted. But the damage to Henderson's credibility was done. The jury had seen the truth. 1 week later, after 6 exhausting weeks of trial, the jury deliberated for 3 long days. When they finally returned to deliver their verdict, Scarlett's heart pounded so hard she thought everyone could hear it. On the charge of insurance fraud, we find the defendant, Mayor Richard Ashford, guilty. On the charge of money laundering, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of embezzlement of public funds, we find the defendant guilty. The courtroom erupted in shouting, crying, and chaos. Scarlett exhaled in profound relief, tears streaming down her face as the weight of months of work finally lifted. Yael hugged her tightly. Jessica beamed with pride. Across the aisle, Jonathan James sat stone-faced, his expression unreadable. Mayor Ashford looked utterly devastated, destroyed. As Scarlett gathered her materials to leave, Jonathan approached one final time. Well played, Ms. Wright. Truly impressive work. But remember, this isn't over. Not by a long shot. It is for you, Scarlett replied firmly, and definitely for your client. Jonathan's smile was cold as ice. We'll see about that. The appeals process is lengthy, and I have other cases, other battles. Give my regards to Luca. 2 months later, true to her promise, Scarlett took an extended leave to focus completely on her family. She helped Liam with his science project about renewable energy. She spent mornings feeding and playing with Louis and Levon, marveling at their rapid growth. She rediscovered what it meant to simply be present in each moment. One peaceful evening, Luca and Rachel visited with Dash, who was now confidently walking and talking. Rachel's pregnancy was progressing beautifully, her face glowing with health and happiness. Luca looked genuinely happier and more at peace than Scarlett had seen him in years. Thank you, Luca said quietly as they sat together on the patio watching the children play, for everything you did, for believing in us, for fighting for us. I honestly don't know what we would have done without you, Scarlett. Scarlett smiled warmly. You would have figured it out eventually. You're both much stronger than you realize. As the sun set spectacularly over Brighton, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples, Scarlett felt a deep sense of contentment settle over her. Her career was thriving and respected. Her family was whole, healthy, and happy. The people she loved most were finding their own happiness and peace. But in the very back of her mind, Jonathan's parting words still lingered like a dark shadow. This isn't over. She firmly pushed the thought away. Whatever challenges came next, she would face them when they arrived. For now, she was exactly where she needed to be. Home, surrounded by love, ready for whatever tomorrow might bring.